Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Department of Sociology, University of Calcutta, I would like to welcome you all to this lecture series. It is my honor to welcome and introduce our resource person of the day, Professor Manish Verma. Professor Verma is the Secretary of the Indian Sociological Society. He is the professor at the Department of Sociology, Babasaheb Bhimrao Ambedkar Central University, Lucknow. He has more than 23 years of teaching and research experience. During his 2 decades-long stint in academic arena at various positions, he has supervised numerous PhD and MPhil research scholars, delivered more than 200 invited lectures as resource person in national, international seminar and conferences. He has published several research papers and chapters in reputed journals and edited volumes and books. The most recent being Environment and Sustainable Development, Perspectives and Issues, published in 2022. He is presently also the Chief Coordinator Program of the Research Committee Working Group 5, Famine and Society of International Sociological Association, Madrid, Spain. He is also the Chairman of UP State Level Multidisciplinary Committee for Evaluation of Impact Assessment Study Report under Land Acquisition, Resettlement and Rehabilitation Act of 2013 of various infrastructure projects. His main research interests concern environment and development with micro-level studies in the areas of involuntary displacement, urban ecology, social justice, and globalization. Today, the title of his paper is on Art of Writing a Research Paper. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much for my warm introduction. I would like to share my screen first. So, allow me to do that. Can you see now?
Yes, sir.
You can see the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, now let me share with you that I'm not able to see all of you. And I'm only able to see the slides. So in case there is any problem, and if I discontinue because of some technological problem and all, then please let me know through telephone. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how to write a research article or research paper. See, all of us are a student or a teacher, and as a student and teacher, all of us are a researcher. We often do research, we conduct research, and there are ways of conducting research, and there are processes of doing research, and apart from that, there are motives of doing research also. We do research for various purposes also. So, but one thing is sure for all of us is that we are conducting research in some area or other. So, how to summarize your research in a certain words or in certain pages, how to portray your research findings in a beautiful way, that becomes of utmost importance for all of us. Even if you have done a beautiful research and if you are not able to provide a good overview of that through your writings, then it becomes all redundant. Your research will go in null and void because you are not able to clear your intention for what purpose you have. You started that research, and ultimately what is the main findings. And apart from that, it is also very important that you give a better look to your research by writing in a better way. So there are, before we go into the details of how to go for writing a research paper or research article, I would like to share with all of you is that there are various purposes for which we write. It's not that our writing is simple. We write for certain purposes. But before we go into the detail of that purposes, let me share with you that why do we write? Actually, we write with a purpose. And when we conduct the research, it becomes very important that we share with people, the audience, the massive audience. And it becomes only possible if we share with massive audience through press or the print media. Otherwise, if we conduct research and we try to disseminate it orally, then we'll be able to reach only 100 people or 500 people. Or even if we conduct any seminar and there we try to, disseminate the findings of that information, then only we'll not be able to cross, 1,000 people. But the press media is the best channel through which we can spread our findings of research across the world. See, if suppose if I have written something and that is published through a very good journal, and that journal is that has been accessed by people sitting at USA or UK or USSR or any place like that, then probably my findings will be disseminated all across world, and accordingly, awareness will be created among the masses or the academia about the findings of my research. And apart from that, deliberation will also there possibility that people will deliberate over that. So, as a researcher, as an academician, it becomes very important that whatever findings we are coming out, that should be disseminated among all. This is the first purpose of our research, and apart from that, we also try to invite comments from others. It may not be possible. Actually, when we talk about research, it is read plus search. That means we are again searching. We are doing the search for the second time. And that second time is not full and final. It continues for the third time and the fourth time and the fifth time also. And that's why we call it a research. And if it is a research, it can be full-fledged only if we invite comments from others, we invite suggestions from others, and it can be possible only if our findings are spread across the masses through press media, because that is the only means, that is the only best possible means through which we can reach to the people who are sitting in the remote corner of the society, and to whom we cannot be able to reach through, a verbal mode or through, interpersonal mode. So, the first and foremost importance of writing article or paper is that it provides us impetus to reach to a vast media mass audience, and the press is the best mechanism to do that. And when we talk about press, we generally talk about publishing houses, and it can be newspaper also, it can be magazines also. And for our case, being a researcher, being a student, and being a sociology student, or a teacher of sociology, it is journal. We have, as I mentioned in the beginning of my discussion, that we have a number of ways of writing, paper or article, and that depends on the thrust, the motive, the purpose for which we are writing. See, I have cited some of them. We have research article and research paper. We have working paper also. I'll elaborate upon all of them one by one. We have position paper also, and we have review paper also. So I have cited some of them over here, and these are very thin boundary between all of them. Though all of them are a piece of paper written by some academician or a researcher, but the thrust of writing, these papers or this research article vary from each other, and that variance is depending upon the purpose or the intention for which these are being written. So we'll see one by one what are these. Let us begin with research article. Research article is a written and published report, and it describes original research results, and most importantly, it contributes to the body of knowledge in a given area. That is what I'm emphasizing time and again, is that when we conduct research, we come out with certain new findings. So it is must that we are coming with new findings, that it will contribute to the vast body of knowledge which is already existing there with us. So we'll add something into that, and that contribution will be significant also from the point of view of the accumulation of knowledge. And when we talk about the research article, generally it is published in a peer-reviewed scholarly journal. When we call a journal as a peer-reviewed, that means it goes through review process. Actually, you must have seen that when we try to locate or search some journals, it is written blind peer-review journal. So what does it mean? Its meaning is that when we submit our article into those journals, they remove the first page into which all the details of the writer is given. His or her institutional belongingness is given. So the editor of the journal removes the first page, and only the body of article is being sent to for the review to 2-3 eminent persons of that area, academician of that area, those who are expert of that area. Without knowing, the experts go through the article in detail, and based on their own observation, they give comments. So the comments may be of three types. First is the article is not of good quality, it is rejected. The second word is article is of very good quality, it is accepted. And the third one is that the article is good but needs certain modifications and corrections. So there may be three kinds of corrections or three kinds of comments given by the experts. And when the article goes through this peer review process, then it may be possible that the expert has given some suggestion for the improvement of that article, and if that happens, then probably he will be able to tap those loopholes. We can able to plug those loopholes which are there in the article, and that makes the article full-fledged, a very comprehensive one. So when we talk about a research article are generally being published in a peer-reviewed scholarly journal. Nowadays we have UGC listed journals, and UGC put it in within brackets, within quote, UGC listing only those journals into its list which are, they consider, their expert committee consider that they are genuine, they are doing real hard work for examining the quality of article, and they are maintaining the best quality of the journals, articles published in their respective journals. So you can easily suppose if an article is published into a peer-reviewed scholarly journal, which is Scopus listed or which is UGC listed, it's quite clear that the journal must be of very good quality. We have working paper also. So what is that working paper? Working paper is, pre-publication version of any academic or policy article or book chapter or reviews. Generally, as a researcher, we think, we ponder, we conduct research, and on the basis of that, we write, some tentative draft, report or article. When we do that exercise and the report remains in the draft form, the question goes in our mind whether we are on the right track or not, whether it is being written properly or not, whether there is chances of some improvement in that article or not. So if we go through those questions, then generally what we do is that we prepare a draft note of that article, and in that we try to incorporate the preliminary findings of our research, the tables and the data, and we describe those tables and data also. And what we do is that we generally share that draft article to other scholars who are working in the same area for inviting their comments. So these working papers are basically a draft kind of preparation which we generally share with people to invite their comments, and based on their comments and suggestions, we incorporate those suggestions, and then finally we develop it as a full-fledged paper, and finally we go to publish into a reputed journal like a research article. So working paper is a tentative paper, it's a draft paper, but one cannot negate that it is not a paper. It is a paper, but it is not full and final paper. It is in the process of writing a full and final paper. So this is another kind of paper for which any researcher can go, And that again, it depends on the intention for which, as I mentioned in the beginning, that you are writing this paper. The third paper is position paper. So position, your own stand. Position means your own stand. What do you think? So position can be of various types. You can take position on your own article. You can take position after reviewing others' article, or it can be anything else also. So when we take a position, when we write a position paper, generally we try to clarify certain things in our paper or against somebody's writer. So a position paper is an essay that presents an arguable opinion about an issue. Whether you agree with certain issue, whether you disagree with certain issue, or whether you want modification to certain issue which you are going through. So it is a kind of position we generally take as a researcher, as an academician, and against certain specified entity or certain specified issues. The goal of the position paper is to convince the audience that there can be two purposes for writing, position paper. First, suppose you have written something, and when it is reached to the masses through, press media, people started commenting against that. When so many comments come, it becomes very important as a researcher for you to defend your position, defend your research, to clarify your position that under what circumstances you have written this article, and what was the process through which you collected the data, how analyze the data, and what is the important finding, and how you can defend those findings, and you can say always vouch that the finding is always true. So in defense of your research, you can write a position paper against the criticism of others, those who have cited against your paper. So this is the one purpose. This is the first purpose. The second purpose is that as a researcher, we also go across so many researches being conducted by other researchers. And suppose if we have something against their findings or their process of research, then we tend to write against those write-ups or the processes which are being adopted by other researchers, and through that you try to make your position clear, that what you perceive, what you view, how do you suggest that the others should go. But the purpose of this paper is that when we write a position paper, we generally try to convince the audience, those who are going to read that, we try to convince that my position is this, look, this is my stand, and how I'm correct about that. So you generally try to vouch that your opinion presented is quite valid and it should be acceptable to all. So either in the case of in defense of our own research or in offense to others' research, you can always take a stand and you can say that this is my position. And when we write a position paper, what we do, how do we arrange position paper? What is the process of writing a position paper? So first of all, we generally try to introduce the topic, and at the same time, generally we provide the basic information about the topic, that what is the topic all about, what is the historical background of the topic, under what circumstances the topic being studied, what are the indicators which are being taken for the study of that topic, and most importantly, what are the main findings of the topic. At the same time, we try to introduce the possible objections to your position, that see, this is the position of others, this is the criticism of others, this is my position, and that position is in objection to the other comments. And at the same time, if we agree with others, then we generally try to acknowledge also that you may be right, however my position is this. So by doing that, generally we try to explain our position, and we generally try to claim that despite all the criticism, despite all the comments received by others, my position is the best, and this is the strength of my position, and this is my counter argument in defense of my position. So a position, when we talk about a position paper, we try to generally counter the views of others by academically writing our position in defense of, our position. Now, there's another type of paper which we write is, it is named as review paper. Review means to view again, to view second time. So what is a review? As a researcher, as a PhD scholar, you must have done so many reviews. Actually, when you started writing your synopsis, or at a time when you were writing your findings of the result through, in the form of dissertation as a PhD scholar, we have done n number of review papers. So what is that review? And what is the purpose of that review? Actually, a review, the purpose of the review paper is to examine the recent progress in particular topic or recent progress in certain area. So why we do review? As a PhD scholars, your teacher must have asked you to that you go and do review of paper. So by doing review, we generally try to sketch down that what are the areas which have been covered, what are the issues which have been covered in that particular area of the research, and after doing that, we'll be able to sketch it carefully, demarcably, that what are the gray areas. What are the areas which have not been touched or which has not been touched properly by the scholars or the studies which have been done previously into that field. So, when we do review paper, we generally try to summarize the current state of knowledge of the topic, and by doing so, generally we try to create an understanding about the subject matter. We also try to discuss the findings of the subject matter, and at the same time we try to discern the gray areas of that subject matter, and probably that gray area would become a food for thought for all of us for future research, and generally we try to pinpoint those gray areas, and accordingly we try to conduct our research by formulating objectives and hypotheses on those gray areas. Actually, as a researcher, when we go for Viva Voce, when we submit our PhD research, generally we come across Viva Voce examination in which external expert comes and asks so many questions. There's one very common question asked to all the researchers that, see, this is the area and you have done review of literature concerning that area and so many reviews you have done. Now you tell me what new you have done. Why you have wasted your time in writing 400 pages and 500 pages bulk thesis? What was the use when you knew everything about this research and you knew already about the findings also? Then it becomes very important for you to defend your research by saying that although so many works have already been done into that area, but these are the gray areas, and based on those gray areas, I have formulated my objectives, and based on those objectives, I formulated certain hypotheses, and my research is strictly pinning those objectives, and see, this is my finding, and this finding, it comes out with certain new, knowledge about the subject matter, and this is the main finding of my research, and that is why my research is very important. So, by doing that, you create an understanding about the topic, and especially about the gray areas, and you discuss those gray areas into the findings of your research, and therein you can try to defend your research papers. So when we write a review paper, what we do is that we review a paper. We generally try to review a paper, or we generally try to review a book also. You must have seen, book reviews into the back of the journal. So many book reviews, Sociological Bulletin you must have seen, or so many other journals you must have seen in that. You must have seen that book reviews are also being given in the last of the journal. So what is that book review? The reviewer studied the whole book, and based on his own remarks, he has given the review of that whole book, and while he was doing that exercise, he was trying to compare that work with some other work, some previous work, or existing work, or try to bring out the positive and negative aspects of the book, and also try to highlight that what new has to be done in the future. What is the lacuna in that paper, and what new has to be done in the future. So While going through that book review, you will be able to understand that what the book is all about. So it gives a preliminary understanding of the book rather than going through the whole book. After going through the review of that book, you can be able to understand the summary of the book and the main argument which is being given into that book, and most importantly, what are the merits and demerits of that book. So these are, various types of, purposes for which we generally try to write, paper. This one, another very important aspect which I would like to discuss with all of you is the thin line of demarcation between research paper and research article. See, as a student, as an academician, as a teacher, we generally tend to use, these two words interchangeably. One is research paper and the another one is research article. Both of them looks like similar, but there are very thin difference between these two, and as a researcher we must know what is the basic difference between a research paper and a research article. Generally, a research paper is written by a student, and that student may be of a university or a college or young researcher, and it may also be possible that the writer which is going to do may be assigned to him or her also. As a student, generally we receive so many assignments from our teacher that, see, you have to write one article on, you have to research on environment and write one article on that, or you have to research on XYZ slums of your particular area and write one paper onto that. So it may be, when a research paper is written, it may be of preliminary nature, written by a student or a young scholar, not that mature writer. But when, on the other hand, when we talk about research article, it is an article, it may be about a subject matter which has been properly researched and written by a matured person who may be expert of that field, and that research article generally tends to get published into a reputed peer-reviewed journal, about which I was just talking about a few slides ago. So when we talk about the research article, it is being written by a matured person, it is properly researched, its writer must be very coherent, it must be very comprehensive, and when it goes through a blind peer review process, then whatever loopholes may be there into that article, that would have been plugged properly by the comments received by other scholars of that field. So it is generally expected that these articles are very academically very rightfully written articles, and accordingly we call them as research articles. Whereas on the other hand, when we talk about research paper, that is also a research article, but the only difference is that that is not being written by a mature person, that has not gone through the peer-reviewed process. But again, there is a possibility a research paper later on, after going through all these processes, may be developed into a full-fledged a research paper, a research article in future. So when we talk about a research paper, it may offer a thesis also. It may not be quite in-depth. See, when we write a thesis and we go for its publication into a reputed publishing house, generally what we do, we edit it, we change so many things into that, and after doing that much of changes, we generally get it published into a reputed publishing house. So a research paper is always having a chance of getting it published as a research article, but that can happen only if it goes through peer review process, or the researcher works on that further and modify it according to the requirement of the experts, the suggestions and the comments received by the expert when it goes through the peer review process. Now, one very fundamental and very important question is that what is the purpose of writing? Why do we write? Why do we tend to write anything? And it's very important to know, because all of us are indulged in some kind of write-up somewhere down the line. The first and basic purpose of writing is that to understand. See, we are not doing charity to others. When we write, we do charity to us first. First of all, we try to understand what we are writing. And for writing, you need to go through different kinds of literature concerning that subject area. And after going through that subject area, we create understanding for ourselves first. When we create comprehensive understanding about the subject matter, then only we reaches to the position to write something. So first and the most important purpose of writing is that to understand by ourselves. And first we understand by ourselves, then we try to understand it by others, because we have to defend our position also. It's not mere that you have written something and people will understand that. You have to defend your position. If somebody comments against you, somebody charges against your write-up, somebody says that your write-up is not mature, then you have to defend also your write-up. So without a proper understanding of the subject matter, you will not be able to defend your position. Second thing is that to remember. When you go through literature, when you write something, somewhere down the line you remember also those aspects. And thirdly, to gain perspective. When you go through so many literature, when you start writing, without having your own perspective, you will not be able to write. You have to take certain stand. You have to make your position clear. You have to make your findings, within bracket, underline that this is my position. This is the findings of my research. So by doing so, you gain perspective, and you see, writing for others is more demanding than writing for oneself. When you are writing for others, you have to reach to their position, and there you have to write. Because it may be possible that the person who is going to read your article or the paper may not be as literate or aware about the subject on which you have already researched for so many times. You have already done so many literature review, and you have created a broad understanding of the subject matter. So when you're writing for yourself, it is not as challenging when you're writing for others, because writing for others requires much information, and that information may be given by going to the level of the person who is going to write, and by assuming that he or she may not be as aware about subject matter as you are. But by doing that exercise, we also create a better understanding of the subject matter. We also try to examine our own ideas and the results, and we go through it time and again. And by doing that exercise, we create a comprehensive understanding about the subject matter. And secondly, and most importantly, when we write, we generally try to disseminate the findings of our research, the results of our research, and which is considered as ethical and moral from you, that you have spent so much of time, you have spent so much of energy while doing that exercise for doing that research. So it is always expected from you that you disseminate the findings of your academic research with other intelligentsia, with people who are interested to know what you have done, and at the same time for the growth of knowledge. At the same time, when we write, generally when it spreads to people, to academic world, generally through them we get feedback also, and that feedback becomes very important. But we try to further build up knowledge, we further go for research into that particular area. At the same time, it is always expected that it is reporting, it is worth reporting if you have come out with certain new findings, and you need to inform the scientific community about the progress which you have done through your rigorous study. And at the same time, when we write, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we try to reach to a broader audience to whom we could not have had able to reach through our, verbal communication or through seminar mode or through any other mode. So writing is the best media through which, we can be able to catch hold of a big audience, the audience which are scattered across globe. They are living in different nook and corners of the society. And when we do that exercise, it provides us better chances of promotion of our work, not only our work, but also the valuable findings which we have come across after doing that rigorous exercise. And lastly, it is said that it is quite unethical that if we have conducted the study and if we have come out with certain new valuable findings and they are not able to share it with other academic world or intelligentsia, it is considered as unethical because knowledge accumulates, knowledge grows only through conducting research into various areas, and when these research accumulates, knowledge also accumulates, and that brings to a different level. After discussing various forms of writing, I would like to put before you is that writing may be different, the purposes may be different, but while writing all these papers, the structure of write-up, the art of write-up are almost similar for all of them. As I mentioned, the purpose, if you are writing a position paper, in that your purpose is to make your position clear. When you are writing a review paper, there you try to intend is that you are reviewing somebody else's paper and try to provide merits and demerits, the positive and negative aspect of that paper. When we are writing a working paper, there we try to share the preliminary findings of our research with the academia, with the intelligentsia. We generally receive feedback from them, and based on those feedbacks, we try to plug the loopholes which are there into that draft paper or that research, and then finally, as a full-fledged paper, we generally publish into a peer-reviewed journal. So, what is the difference between all these papers? The thin line of difference between all these is the purpose for which we have written. However, the stages of writing, the process of writing, these papers are almost similar, barring the thrust and aim which I am trying to put before you is only difference between all of them. Now, what are the three main components of an article or paper? See, whenever you write any paper, it may be a position paper, it may be a review paper, or it may be anything else. First of all, there should be an overall idea on which you have to write. Without an idea, you cannot be able to write anything. You cannot write anything null. So, the first part of writing any article or paper is that there should be an overall idea about the subject matter. Secondly, execution of the work. How you will go about that? What will be the most prudent way of writing, your research paper or the book or the journal? So this is the second most important aspect of writing any article or paper. And thirdly and most importantly comes the presentation part. The third part, the presentation part, that becomes very important. How you will try to arrange all these aspects into a piece of work, and how you will try to portray before the academia and intelligentsia, that becomes very important. So by combining all these three aspects, one will be able to write a very good paper or research article. Similarly, it's not that we write on our own, it is the creation of our own ideas or our own mind. If that is so, then it cannot be called as a research. Then it will be called as a novel. We read so many novels in Hindi also, in English also, fiction novels also. So, but that doesn't have authenticity. But when we conduct research, it is always authentic research. and it is always based on some scientific principles. So when we decided that into certain area we have to work, we have to write. How do we write? Without any data, without any evidence. So we have a long journey from scientific research to manuscript writing. First of all, you need to have certain idea, certain issues, certain subject matter, and by locating that subject matter, you generally collect a set of data. You also define your research questions. And after doing these two exercises, we generally go for manuscript writing. So, data to construction of manuscript. This is the pathway to writing any research paper or any research article. Now, after going through all this preliminary discussion, let us come to the main issue, that how to write a research article or research paper or a position paper or a review paper or anything like that. So you can see the template. I have arranged all these aspects into this template. This is the structure of the paper. This is the structure of the research article, through which we have to go through, or we have to follow while writing our paper or article or the book or manuscript. See, when I'm talking about research article or research paper, it is talking about research article or research paper also, but at the same time down the line I'm trying to indicate this is also a book also, because if you are doing that exercise also, in that also you have to follow the same process. So what is the structure? So first of all, I'm just narrating all these points into bullets. Later on I'll explain that how we have to go into details into all these aspects. The first is title page. After that we have abstract part. The third one is introduction. The fourth one is methods. Next one is theoretical framework. After that we have results and discussion. Finally we came out with the conclusion. So this is the part of the article. After that we have to go for some other exercise also that becomes very important from academic point of view, and that is acknowledgement, references, tables and captions, and figures and captions. So these last two you can see, tables and captions, or figures and captions. This I have given it into the last. It can be, there are two ways of writing any article or any paper. One method is that you put it into the discussion part, the tables captions and the figures caption, and there itself you discuss all these things. There's another way of writing is that you discuss all those into the main text, those tables and figures, and put the tables and figures into the last of the write-up, and in the main part where you discuss all these findings in the text form, there you provide the table number or the figure number. So if somebody is interested to see those tables and figures, they can go to the last page of your manuscript, and there he or she will be able to see those tables. I'll discuss in detail later on when we'll come to these points one by one. So the first page is title. Title is very important for any manuscript. You see, title should be simple, attractive, accurate, and describing the thesis statement. See, after going through the title, you should be in a position to understand that what is being written into the whole 500 pages thesis, voluminous thesis. So the name of the article should be replica of the 500 pages which you have been trying to write into your voluminous manuscript. After that, after writing a beautiful title, you need to provide the author's affiliation. That means you have to write your name, your affiliation, that you are an assistant professor, or you are a research scholar, the university or the institution where you are studying, your complete contact number, which includes your email number, email ID, and cell number also. So these are the basic information which you need to provide into the title page of the manuscript. And see, when the article goes through blind peer review, while at the time of publication, this is the page which I was talking about, that are generally being reviewed by the editor, and then the whole article is being sent to the reviewer for review. So when your first page is not there into that article, nobody will be able to understand that who has written this article. And then according to merit of the article, that articles are, those papers are being, evaluated and examined, and accordingly the comments are being given by the external experts who are going to examine those papers. So this is the first page which becomes very important, and most important thing is that your title should be quite accurate, simple, elaborative, and describing about the subject matter which you are going to study or describe into the whole paper. The second part after that is that abstract. Abstract is summary of the whole manuscript. See, if you have written 50-page article or 100-page article or 200-page thesis or 500-page books, so that abstract should be summary of whatever you have written. Suppose if I want to know that what is being written into that article or the manuscript, just by going through that abstract, I should be in a position to understand that what are being described into that. So abstract is very important. It should be a replica of those 500 pages. It should be summary of all those aspects. And how to write that abstract? While writing that abstract, it may be of 200 words or 250 words or 300 words and 500 words and not more than that. And it depends on the requirement of the journal or the paper or the book, how much words they require into that. Accordingly, you have to write that abstract, and how to write that abstract also becomes very important. When we write that abstract, we begin with few sentences focusing about what the study is all about. It should be very short, precise, and an independent document. It should not be written there that you consult the literature of page number 40, or you go through chapter number 30. There you will find the detail about it. It should not be like that. It should be autonomous, independent document, and should be self-explanatory of the facts that what are being covered into the voluminous manuscript. It also should include the objective of the research or the paper, the methods which you have used, the discussion and the conclusion. And when we say so, generally we try to intend to highlight is that whatever is being covered into that voluminous thesis or the manuscript which you have written, it may be 20 pages or it may be 500 pages, the summary of all those aspects should come into that, into the crisp, precise way, into 200 words or 300 words or 500 words. After that, we generally try to provide 5 keywords. What is the keywords? When we say keywords, that indicates that these are the words which are being mostly used, or these are the issues which are being mostly used into the manuscript. So after going through those 5 keywords, we'll be in a position to understand that what are the issues which are being covered into that manuscript or that write-up or that paper or that article, or it may be anything. After that, we have to write the introduction. See, all of us must have appeared for some exam or other in our life. Suppose tomorrow is exam and the night you are going to study and you saw a big and voluminous book, and somebody said that you have to go through the book, entire book, so that you can be able to understand questions tomorrow morning. What you have done? Since you don't have time, what you will do? You will go through the introduction of that book. And while studying that introduction, while reading that introduction, you will be in a position to understand what are being written, what is being written into coming 400 pages or 500 pages. So, what does it mean? It means that introduction is again the summary of the aspects which you are going to cover into the coming pages. So this is the difference between introduction and conclusion. The conclusion does also the same thing. The difference between introduction and conclusion is that introduction summarizes the aspects which you are going to deal in coming 400 pages. And when you go through the conclusion summarizes the aspects which you have already done into the previous 400 pages. But both of them are providing the summary of the literature which are being written into the main body of that book or the thesis or the manuscript. So introduction and conclusion becomes very important part of any important literature. And when we say that introduction is replica of what is being written into the whole text, it should be a short review of literature on that topic or the specific topic which you are going to write or you have studied. What are the specific issues and the objectives which you are trying to address into that manuscript? You also have to highlight the statement of the problem, the hypothesis, if there is any hypothesis like that, and also at the same time you have to highlight the methodology also which you have pursued into that research, and most importantly, you have to provide the summary and the significance of that research work also. That means you have provided a summary of the whole research work there also. So, like abstract, in introduction also you are trying to provide, to do the same kind of exercise, but this introduction is a little bit bigger. The abstract was into just precise and crisp into 200 and 250 words. So introduction should be short, precise, crisp also, and it provides a replica of what you have done into the coming 500 pages. And it is very important. So you need to write it very carefully, because somebody want to go through your literature, introduction becomes very important. That creates an impression in the mind of the researcher or the reader who is going to study that. If the introduction is good, it is written in a very lucid manner, it is very comprehensive, it is very connected with each other, the paragraphs and sentences are connected to each other, they are trying to make out what you are trying to suggest to others, then probably if we say that you have written a good research work, you have written a good research paper, or your manuscript is very good. Otherwise, after going to the introductory part, if somebody lose interest by saying that it is not of that quality, your write-up is not lucid, it is not comprehensive, there are so many grammatical problems, then probably there are chances that people will not read your article, people will not read your literature, and even if you send it for publication to some good journal, there are chances that it may get rejected. So you need to write a very good introduction part. Now coming to the methods. After writing the introduction, you generally try to describe the methods and the techniques which you have used for doing that research, the sampling process, the collection of data, what was the process, how did you, and what was the process of doing analysis, how interpretation of data was done, what measurement techniques you used. Actually, all this needs to be clearly specified. See, we are into the domain of social science. See, within quote there is the word science, and when we use the word science with society or social studies or sociology or any social science issue, that means when we say it is a science, that means there are always chances of getting it replicate. And when we use the word replicate, that means anybody can re-verify it. And re-verification can only be done if we know the processes, the stages through which the researches are being conducted, the background in which the researches are being conducted, who were the respondents, on whom researches are being conducted. It becomes very important to understand. So after introduction, it becomes very important for you as a researcher to describe all those in details. Suppose if somebody want to replicate those study, somebody want to test whether your findings are accurate or not, or even if suppose after 10 years, 15 years, somebody want to again do research on the same field, in the same area, to understand what kind of changes has happened into that area, then again they should have certain, parameters, certain guidelines, certain stages, and certain, measurement techniques through which, he crossed through those, researches. So it is always expected that when you write, you provide details of that method into your write-up so that others can also follow into future. So if you do that, your research becomes most authentic and replicative, as I mentioned here, that anybody can follow that research. It also becomes very important from you that you clarify at the outset that what kind of data you have used in your research, whether it is primary data or secondary data, qualitative data or quantitative data. See, what I'm trying to suggest is that when you start write-up, after giving a introductory part, you provide the detailed nuances of the methodological part which you have covered into that research. Otherwise, your research will not be considered as authentic. It cannot be replicative also in future. So it becomes your moral responsibility. It becomes your moral duty also to provide the details of the methods which you have used into that. After that, you have to provide the results and discussion section. And this section includes the description of the data which you have collected from the field. And at the same time, the raw data cannot provide the details of the findings. So here becomes your responsibility to interpret that data also. And while doing that interpretation, you should come out with the findings, new findings. If you are seeing something different, which is you think from your perspective is new one for that discipline or the subject matter, you need to highlight those aspects also. So data provides the insight into the newer, interpretation, newer findings of that area. See, I was talking about tables, and I was talking about figures also in the beginning, and I said that you can discuss the tables and figure in the text itself, or there is another way that you discuss the text here and you write see table 1 in bracket, see figure 5 in bracket, and discuss the findings of that table and figure here itself in the text, and later on at the last of that your manuscript you provide the detailed list of the details of the figures and the tables there. So if somebody want to study that, see that what is there into that table, he can go through skip through the pages and see what is being given into that table and into that figure. So there are two ways of writing, but the most popular one is that you provide tables and figure amidst the text itself, and there itself you provide not only the table and figures but also discuss everything there itself. But it's up to you that which way of writing you want. And again, I suggest that when you are writing your article or paper for any particular journal, you see the requirement of that journal, that what they require from you, what is the pattern of their write-up. Accordingly you follow and accordingly you write. Again, after this description of data and interpretation and table and figure and that discussion, in some cases hypotheses have also been proposed in the beginning, and if that is being done in the methodology part which was there in the previous slide, then if you have taken some hypothesis, then you discuss the main findings of your result and you examine clearly that whether your finding is matching, confirming the hypothesis, it is rejecting the hypothesis, or it is in between these two. See, if your finding is in conformation with the hypothesis which you have taken, that means you are again, confirming the earlier previously existed knowledge. And if your hypothesis is in rejection of, your finding is in rejection of the hypothesis, that means the previous existed knowledge on which you formulated the hypothesis is no longer valid now. That means you have come out with a new finding, and that would become very valuable from the point of view of the findings of your research. And you have to clearly mention, not only in the findings also, but in the last also, and you can also try to aim that on the basis of these findings, what kind of policies can be formulated for the betterment of the society. Because nowadays we are into the world of action result. We are not only doing research, but also we try to suggest, or we try to change in the existing status quo. We go for the betterment. At the same time, when you are directing the findings of your research, it becomes very important that you suggest, you write that through objective wise, that what objectives were taken by you and what are the findings as per the objectives which you have chosen, and that should be taking one objective at a time. That means separately all objectives findings should be clarified for the clarity of the writer. While you do that exercise, you begin with the overview of the work, summarize the most important finding, accepting or rejecting of the hypothesis which you have already done through your data, and that data analysis, that should also be highlighted. And in the last, the findings and should also be highlighted. And it is also becomes very important that when you try to highlight your findings, you try to compare with the earlier studies. That what was the earlier stage of knowledge, and what are your findings, and how it is different from the earlier knowledge. And if you are trying to earmark that kind of deviation, then probably you will be able to highlight in a beautiful manner that this is the new area, this is the new finding, which is the sole result of my utmost exercise which I have done, my labor which I have put in for doing that rigorous exercise. And finally, the theoretical contribution which is being done by your study, that must also be clarified, that what kind of theoretical contributions you are going to make, or your findings is going to make. So this is all about the body of the text which you have to write. The first part is introduction, the second part is body of the text, and the last part is conclusion. As I mentioned in the beginning, the conclusion and the introduction are both the same. In the introduction part, we try to summarize that what we are trying to do into the coming pages. It may be 100 pages, it may be 50 pages, it may be 200 pages. And conclusion is suggestive of the facts which we have already done in the previous 100 or 200 pages. So again, when we say conclusion, and as I mentioned in the beginning itself, that suppose if I don't want to go through the whole book, I go through either introduction or conclusion. I suppose if I have decided to go through the conclusion, then how will we be able to get the idea about the whole manuscript? Only if the conclusion is replica of the whole text, the whole manuscript, which are into the volumes, which are very bulky. So again, we have to summarize everything, and also we have to highlight the main findings. How will we do about that? We need to go through a brief introduction of the work. We also have to briefly discuss the results, the findings. What are the important, significant results? That should also be mentioned here. And at the same time, it is also very important for you to discuss the limitations of your study. You see, limitations become very important. See, when you share your findings, share your paper, share your manuscript with academia, with intelligentsia, they will go through it, and it may be possible that after going through those, literature, they come against your literature they come with certain comments against your literature. They say that it is not complete, it is not comprehensive, or certain areas have not been, covered into that research. So it may be your limitations. So it is always expected from a good researcher that at the outset he or she should clarify into his findings or into his write-up the limitations. When you yourself clarify those limitations by citing that because of time, because of the paucity of energy, because of the limitations of funding, because of limitations of manpower, you will not be able to cover all these aspects. Or if you would have covered so many other aspects, the study would have been become very fast. By citing those clarifications, you can always highlight the limitations of your study by yourself only. And if you do that, then probably nobody else will be in a position to comment against you, and then in that way your result will be or your work will be full-fledged. Either you highlight your limitations or other will highlight your limitations. When you already mention those limitations, then if the other point out those aspects, you can easily say that, sir, I have already discussed these aspects into my study, and because of paucity of time and energy, it was not possible for me to cover all those areas. And probably in my future research, if I go further do some research into that area, probably I'll try to cover those aspects. Finally, you also have to highlight the contribution of the study, which it is going to make into the larger body of knowledge, into the specific area of study or the subject matter. See, this becomes very important. In your PhD Viva Voce examination, the experts would have asked you that, see, you have spent 5 years of time and you have written such a voluminous thesis. What contributions you are going to make into the larger body of knowledge? Thereby you can say that this is the main important finding, and I think this finding is very important for the sake of growth of knowledge to the broader body of knowledge, and probably on the basis of that, government can formulate certain policy also to improvise the situation. So, and at the same time, it depends upon you. The last paragraph is optional, that you can suggest the future areas which can further be studied onto the subject matter. That means, in the last part of your conclusion, you can say that this is my study, this is how I concluded. However, there is further possibility of going through research. If somebody wants, they can study these XYZ areas which are not being covered by me properly, or which I think is a food for thought for future researchers. So you can also suggest. Now your article is complete. The preliminary part of the article, before article part, was the cover page, the abstract, 5 keywords, your institutional affiliation, and and this kind of thing. It was before article. After that, you have written your article or paper. Once the article and paper is completed, after the writing of the conclusion and the findings, then after article part starts, and that also becomes very important from academic point of view. And why it becomes very important, I'll discuss into the coming slides. When you complete writing your article, you need to write acknowledgements, and we generally write acknowledgements. And while we write acknowledgement, we provide a brief statement by acknowledging all those who have contributed to the completion of this research. We can contribute to all the participants. It may be individuals or organizations or groups whom you approach for the conduct of the research, or whom you approach for providing literature, or whom you approach for providing library inputs. So whosoever you consulted during the conduct of research, it is always expected that you acknowledge their contributions to the completion of the research. At the same time, it is always also expected that you acknowledge the inputs given by the consultants, the colleagues, your friends, or any other author who has done study into the same area and you have discussed with them. So you need to acknowledge them also that I am highly indebted from their knowledge. I borrow this things from them. Finally, when we do researches, at times we get funding from different funding agencies, those who provide us funds for conducting this research, or at some times, we take some fund from university also for conducting some, minor kind of researches, and you have done so. If you have done so, you need to acknowledge those funding agencies also, and by highlighting that who were those funding agencies and how they contributed for the conduct of this research, this also becomes very important. The last part of your article, the paper, is references. And it is very important because, if you have not done proper referencing and proper citation, then probably you may fall down into the plagiarism trap. See, if you have done rigorous academic exercise, then it will be called as academic work, academic research. But you have not done proper citation, if you have not done proper referencing, then probably it will be called as thieving. It will be called as stealing. And it is a crime. It is called plagiarism in the academic world. So it is always better that you cite your text, you provide references of all the text which you have cited into the manuscript. And one very important thing which I would like to highlight over here is that if you go through any thesis or any research paper or any paper, generally we find that there are so many references which are mentioned in the last of the paper which are not being cited into the main text. My caution to all of you is that write only references in the last of the paper, the references which are being used into the main text as citation. And what do you mean by citation? When we provide citation, suppose you have taken one paragraph of a book which is written by Manish Verma, Development, Displacement and Resettlement. In the citation part, where you have given that particular paragraph, you put that paragraph into inverted commas. And there are two ways of giving citation. In fact, three ways of giving citation. One is that you put a bracket there and write Verma 2004. There's another way, you put number 1 there and in the footnote part you write Verma 2004. And there's third way also, you write 1 there and at the end of the literature, which we call end note, there you write Verma 2004. Suppose Verma 2004 book is cited. Now in the reference part, that Verma 2004 book should come into full detail. Verma, Manish K, 2004, Development, Displacement and Resettlement, Rawat Publication, Jaipur. This is the detail which should come into the last of the article in the form of references. And when we write that, it is not simply we write Verma 2004 or Verma Manish Kumar or Manish Kumar Verma Development, Displacement, Resettlement, and we have not given the entire detail of the book. We have to follow a proper formatting of writing references and citations. This is very important. Secondly, there are various ways of writing citation and referencing. We have MLA pattern, Modern Language Association, which we call. We have MBA pattern, American Psychological Association, we call it. And there's another way, we call it as Chicago style. These are very prevalent way of writing, citation and references. We have to follow any one of them. It's not that in one paragraph you have followed APA. In second paragraph you have followed Chicago style. In the third paragraph you are following, MLA. Like this you will make the khichdi of all all the text, You have to follow one way, and that should strictly be followed into the entire text of the literature. If you are doing citation in one particular way, you have to follow it into the entire text. If you are doing referencing in a particular way, you have to follow into the entire text. And apart from that, as I mentioned, that if you are citing, just citing of an author or journal is not important. You have to provide the entire detail into the referencing part, then only it will pick up. In fact, citation and referencing are complementary to each other. And if you send your article for publication to some good journal, first task what they do is that they generally try to check that what authors are being cited into the citation part, and whether their name is and details are available in the reference part or not. First thing they do it. Secondly, they try to see that what are the books and the articles which are being referred in the reference part and not being cited in the main text. So they try to eliminate those also. So be careful while writing citation and references, that you have to write only those citations into text whom you are quoting, and that should be within quote. And secondly, if you are citing them, you provide their detail into the referencing tab format. And secondly, as I mentioned, that you have to follow one way of writing, citation and referencing into one article. It's not that interchangeably you are writing, different formats, you are different methods, and by, making it easily all together. Choose any one style throughout the paper. That would be quite academically, right manner. As I mentioned in the beginning of our discussion, that tables and table captions and literature and figures and figure captions are very important. See what are tables. After collecting data from the field, we generally try to tabulate it, and when we formulate a table, we provide one caption over that. That caption is name of the table. And when we provide a caption of the table, that means it should be illustrative of the facts which are being discussed into that table, or which are going to be discussed into that table. So the captions becomes very important. Likewise, when we provide figures, its captions should also be quite narrative of the facts which are being covered into that figure. So these two things are very important. We need to create table. We need to create figures, and these two cannot be put into barren. They always possess their captions, that is their heading, their name, and that should be illustrative of the facts which are being covered into that table or into that figure. And as I just discussed, that tables and captions and figures and captions can be placed at two places. Either it can be placed into the text itself. There you can write by providing a table number one, you, heading of the table, and then you provide the raw structure of the table, and later on you can describe the table, discuss the table, and highlight the main findings of the table. There's another way that in the text you write see table 1 in bracket and discuss everything there, and you put the table in the last, or you put the figure into the last. So suppose if I don't want to see those tables and figures, there's no need for me to skip all those pages and go into the last. And if I'm interested to see that how the table is and what the figure is describing all about, whether these are matching with each other or not, the description and the table and the figures are matching with each other or not, then I can go to the last pages, and then I can see that. Now, very important aspect which I am going to discuss with all of you is that, and especially all of you are quite young, the authorship and originality is very important while you do this academic exercise. So it is my suggestion that you always avoid plagiarism. You try to ensure that whatever you are writing is authentic, the data which you are collecting is collected by you only, and the text which you are using is your own creation itself. And all pure works which you are going to cite into that paper, you should provide proper citation of that, as I just discussed that you cite there itself while providing inverted comma, and then in the last you provide references also, then it will become academic exercise. Again, at the same time, there should be complete agreement between the people if there are more than one author of that article. Suppose you have three persons meeting together, have written one article and it is being published, and after the publication somebody saw that his name is at the third in the list of that authors. Then he can go to the court and challenge that I was the main researcher and I should have been the first author of that article, and my name is being put in the last. So there should be proper agreement, proper prior agreement between all the authors about the number on which the order on which their name should come, so that in future there should not be any litigation on the basis of that. At the same time, if you are using somebody else literature or text, you should take you should clearly provide a citation. And there is another point that in so many books or in so many articles there are certain rules that if you take words more than that much of words, then you have to take prior permission from the publisher. So you check whether that the material which you are borrowing from some other book, whether that publisher of that book permits citation of these words into some other article or not. And if the permission is not there, before citing, you take your permission from them to avoid any legal hassle in the law. Conducting research in itself quite hectic and very time-consuming work. And after doing that much of research and putting that much of energy, if you get trapped into legal hassle, that will become quite very dangerous for your academic write-up, and that also become very bad for your career also. Then you will be trapped into academic into the legal hassle, and it is not good for your career. So always need to be very careful about all these things. And the last part is language and editing. Suppose you have done very good exercise, you have done a beautiful write-up, and there are so many grammatical problem, spelling problem, punctuation problem. So as a good researcher, you have to provide best kind of overview to all those things, and it should be in the best form to the reader. So it is not sufficient. It is not always expected from you that you only confine to the spell check of the computer, Google spell check. You need to read it twice or thrice, doing proper editing, even for getting better feedback. You can share these documents with some other people who will go through it, and they can also suggest what editing is required into that article. And after doing that preliminary exercise, only you send it for publication to some good publisher. While doing this editing work, you have to see that language is proper, figure is proper, tables are proper, the captions of figures and tables are matching with these tables and figures or not, references are properly given or not, citation is properly given or not, the name of the journal is properly cited or not. If there is any punctuation, you have to see that also carefully, because comma and full stop, that makes a lot of difference. If you remove comma, or if you remove full stop from some of the sentences, the entire meaning of the sentence will that go away. So you need to be very careful about all these things. So what I am trying to suggest is that while finally preparing the volume or the manuscript, you need to be very, very serious. You need to be very careful about the manuscript, especially about the language and editing part. Apart from that, if you are eyeing some special journal in which you are trying to publish your paper, see the requirement of that journal. Generally, you see that in the last page of the journal, there are some guidelines. That guidelines for authors are being given. You go through those guidelines and see what are the specific requirements for publication into that journal. Suppose if if a journal says that the article should be within 5,000 words, the abstract should be between 250 words, and there should be five, keywords, and the citation should be APA form. So you have to follow these words. The journal asks 5,000 words, and you have written 10,000 words article, it is automatically rejected. Your article will be rejected, and then generally what happens? So many young research scholars, they come to me and they say, sir, we have written an article, but they are not going to publish it. They are doing bhai bhatija kind of thing. It's not that. It's not that. You see how much serious we were about writing, those articles. The first and foremost task of a good researcher is that if he or she is going to write an article, the first task which I assign to you is that you go through the journals which are, prone to publish articles related to your subject matter. So first, you try to earmark those journals. If suppose you have earmarked X journal and you notice that your paper, the subject on which your paper is being written, is covered into those journals, that particular journal, you see the requirement of that journal. What is the specific format which the journal requires? According to that format, you write your article. Then there are all possibilities that that article will be accepted in the first book after the peer review. And even if there is some comments, that comments are quite preliminary, that is not very serious. And if you are not following the format of that journal, there are all possibilities that in the first run itself, your article will be rejected. So, whenever you conduct research, you put your best. You put your best energy. You put your best, mind. So it is my suggestion to you: when you write your paper, when you write your maximum, you try to be similarly serious, like you were earlier also. So you need to be very serious. You need to be very careful, and you need to be very intelligently playing also. So you try to earmark those journals, see the format, accordingly you write your article, fulfill all the mandate of that journal, accordingly you try to publish your article. And in the last, I'll discuss with you few tips. What are the essentials of a good research paper or article? However, most of the things I have already discussed with you, but just in bullets, I'll suggest some very important things. The first and foremost aspect is that it should be a valid publication. It's not that if you have stolen it from somewhere, it is in the plagiarism form. So you do a valid research and you publish it at a valid publisher also. You see what journal, what specific peer-reviewed journal is specifically interested to publish your article, accordingly you get it published. At the same time, when you are writing an article, you disclose the results so that the peers who are going to study it, they will be in a position to assess the inferences which are being given there. They can be able to verify the results also, and also they should be in a position to evaluate the intellectual process. So you provide the disclosure of all those aspects, not only the disclosure of results, but also you discuss the stages and the process which you have followed in conducting the research. Thirdly, your manuscript should be properly edited for grammatical errors, for captions, for correctness, for data, tables and figures and everything. At the same time, if you are doing a good research work, you have to also see that how connected it is with previous work or previous relevant knowledge into the same field, and what new finding it is going to provide, which can be a new finding into that area. And at the same time, you have to also ensure that what theoretical framework which you have put in, or what new theoretical framework you have brought in after conducting this research. And most importantly, the last I can suggest is that you must follow the general guidelines, especially about the word limit, because the journal says that you have to write in 5,000 words. If you have written in 2,000 words, it will be rejected. If you have written in 7,000 words, it will again be rejected. What you can do is that if it is 5,000, you can write in 4,500 words or 500 words, but not less than that and not more than that. So these are very important while you go for publishing of your research work. So with these words, I thank all of you for your patience hearing and providing your valuable time. And also I'm thankful to Professor Sudeshna Basu and her entire team for giving me this opportunity to share my views with all of you.
I would like to open the for questions.
I'll request all the participants to put on their camera. Otherwise, it doesn't look sound. It seems that I'm sitting in front of a wall and I'm, speaking and speaking for hours. So I'll request all of you to put on your camera so that I can see you and the session can be interactive. We can discuss with each other.
Anyone who is putting up a question, please introduce yourself before you put the question.
Good evening, sir. I have a question. So my name is Nagma and I'm doing PhD research under CU, Calcutta University, and my supervisor is Dr. Smita Bhattacharya. So here, thank you very much, first of all, for this very enlightening lecture. I know that the tips and tricks that you have shared with us is going to help us in our future research. And obviously, I do have a question to ask because we are freshers in this field of research and you people are expertise, so you people can help us better, right? So my question here is, as you mentioned in your lecture, that when we do review of literature, so we basically try to view it again or see it with empirical data and test it. Okay. So here my question is, sometimes as we are the new researchers, so we find difficulties when we do the research and by doing such, topics where you have that the number of data or the literature are very less in number, which are actually serving the purpose of our research. So my question here is that how to deal with such problems and how we can cope up with this kind of issues that we find in the very initial stage of our research. Thank you, sir.
Nagma, first of all, I would like to clarify that we are all researchers and we are all learners. Nobody is expert into that area, you see. And secondly, there is no full-fledged method of conducting research. You see, the researcher is always very intelligent. He or she is the master of his or her own research. You are the best judge that what subject you have chosen, what would be the best objective, what would be the best hypothesis, what method you will adopt, and how you will go about the writing your text, and what would be the findings of your research. So I think in that way we are all our learner. We all do research for the first time, and we all learn through our our research. This is the one thing which I would like to clarify before the beginning of our discussion. And the second thing is that you see there are two kinds of research. One is research and the other one is search. When we are researching, we have n number of already works which have been done into that area, and when you go for a review literature, you will find so many available literature into that field. And then if there are so many literature available into that field, then you try to see that what are the gray areas. We try to highlight or pinpoint those gray areas, and then probably on the basis of that you formulate your objectives and hypotheses. There are another ways that the research has never been conducted in that area, like corona. See, recent days, there are so many studies which are being conducted on the impacts of corona. It is scientific point also, and it is a science point also. When the corona was not existed earlier with us, how can there be literature related to that? Then in that case, you can have literature related to health, You can relate it, literature related to some other related chronic disease like this, you know. So you can also have literature related to, the people's psychology, the people's, mentality, the people's coping technology, mechanism. So these are, interrelated area. You see, if you want to do research into X area, it is not, it is existed in vacuum. In social science, each and every things are interrelated with each other. So you have to, you have to locate those, interrelated aspects and see that what area are the areas which are being connected with that. Try to focus those aspects, try to recruit those areas, and at the same time, you can say that since no work has already been done in the area, so this is my hypothesis, and it you will be coming out with your hypothesis for the first time in the domain of subject. So maybe you would be a pioneer into that area of research in future, and people will cite your work because you would be the first person doing research into that area. Hope I'm making my point clear to all of you. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Neha, unmute yourself before you question.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Neha Dasgupta and I am a PhD student working under Sudeshnaman's guidance. Sir, I would like to first of all say that it was a very insightful session, especially because research paper writing is something that all research students need to undertake. My question is more of a query and it is regarding the idea of the working papers wherein we submit a pre-publication version to basically check if our arguments are going in the right direction, and we invite feedback from other scholars and other members of the academic community. Sir, basically my question is that what if, especially since many suggestions are extremely useful and valuable, what if we receive feedback that is conflicting in nature? How do we then incorporate it into our work if the feedback, suppose we receive multiple number of feedbacks, how do we incorporate that into our work?
See, what I said just right now, that you are the master of your research, see, and you have your own perspective. You better know that from what perspective you have started your research, what you intend to find out from your research, see. And it's not necessary that whatever comments you are receiving, you should accept all those in toto. Again, there's another kind of, write-up which we call that position paper. Suppose if you want to accept, you accept it. If you are not willing to accept those comments, then don't accept. But you should be in a position to counter those arguments academically, not by quarreling. You are against me and you are trying to destroy my energy and my whole write-up. You should be academically in a position to defend your article which you have written. See what happens in the PhD Viva Mostly. You have spent 5 years of time. You have written a voluminous 500 pages, thesis. Then in the last, external experts come, your peer friends and colleagues, they come and they ask questions from you. What you do? You try to defend your work. You say that this is my position, how I went about it. This is my findings. You also try to highlight that this is the limitations of my work. And when you are highlighting the limitations of work, it doesn't, limit your working capacity or doesn't, undermine your work. See, it is academic exercise. And you were a single person. How could have you have studied, the whole sky and the moon and the Mars within that 5 years of time? So, very carefully, very smartly and very intelligently, you need to defend your position. And academics is all about, smartness. How smart you are to defend your questions, how smart you are to portray or to to convince others. That is most important aspect of conducting any research. So my suggestion to you is that do rigorous exercise, do rigorous study, and whatever findings you are coming out, you should be in a position to defend that. And even if you are receiving comments from others, you see whether these comments are worthy of being accepted or not. If you think that it should be accepted, then you accept that and you try to incorporate that into your thesis. And if you are not, then you reject that, but should be in a position to defend your thesis. Okay? So all the best.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very helpful. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Anyone else has a question for Professor Verma?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, this
Who's
is.
that?
I'll request you to put on your camera first.
My net is not allowing me to turn on the camera, but I am.
Actually, we understand that. This is a student from our department.
So introduce yourself first.
Okay. He has come on to someone else's camera. Okay. Go ahead, Rama.
Okay. Good evening, sir. First of all, it felt great listening to you. I am a MA student at University of Calcutta, and I remember you telling that what we as MA students, or let's say a UG student, what papers that we write at the moment are called research paper, whereas what let's say assistant professors who have spent years in the academic field, what they write is called a research article. So you pointed out the difference between the research paper and the research article, right? So you talked about experience and being mature in the field, but my question is that what makes them experienced and mature? Is it just the amount of time they've spent in that field that is making them experienced, or making them a good researcher, or they are publishing good?
Into a derogatory manner, you see. Being a MA student, you have started for the first time, doing this research. You don't have any idea about how to go about that. Your teacher, the supervisor, they explains you that this is the way of, creation of tools. This is the technique, through which you have to collect data. You go and try to collect data. Then you try to formulate, tables. That for doing that also you get suggestion from your supervisor. That means what I'm trying to say is that for everything you get idea from your supervisor. Okay? Even if you give your final write up to them, then also they give so many comments, and you try to incorporate into that. When you continue doing that exercise for 4 times or 5 times, then probably after doing that exercise you need not take support from your supervisor. You know how to formulate research hypothesis, how can be objectives be formulated, the tools and techniques can be formulated, that. So after doing that exercise for n number of times, you will become mature. And your write-up will also be improved one. So then, and see, I just said that we are all our students, see. A very good scholar like Professor T.K. Oman or Professor Yogendra Singh, or for that matter, Professor Sudesna Basu Mukherjee, if they send their article to a very good journal, then they send us, so many comments. You ask, madam is sitting over there, and after going through those comments, you will realize that we are nothing. But still we, work on that and we get it published. So we are all on the same boat. It's only the matter of experience, the number of years, the number of, articles which we have written, the number of years which we spend, pondering on all these aspects. This is the only difference. After 20 years, after 10 years, you will also be in our position, giving lecture on the same topic and saying the same thing.
Thank you, sir.
Do we have any more questions? Okay, if not, clear?
Well, thank you for the wonderful deliberation as well as useful lecture. And on behalf of the Department of Sociology, University of Calcutta, we express our sincere gratitude to you, sir, giving us your precious time from the schedule. We come to know the art, techniques and method of writing a research paper spoken of the detailing of structure of manuscripts for your discussion. Thanks a lot, sir, and thank you all the participants on behalf of the department for being with us. And again, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you, Manish. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye, sir. Hope to have you on again. Hopefully, yes, sir.